Hi, I'm Anna Marie Cox. And Dan, are you sure you want to do this?
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and Anna, what you say here will be noted in the log for the good of the company.
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of
The Law of the Sea Treaty.
And symbiosis. Today we'll be talking about Alien Romulus, which is available at the cinema. Like actual people go in groups still to these things. Even though there is currently the highest COVID outbreak since winter a few years ago. So people are still doing it.
I currently have COVID, so yeah, trust me. Yeah,
and you went to see a movie.
I did. I was masked, but just to be clear, I'm not symptomatic, and it's the downside of COVID. And there were also I felt fine. I did not feel guilty. There were 12 people in the theater, and everyone except my daughter was way the hell away from me. So
yeah, there were people around me,
not stressful.
But I'm also it's Texas. Whatever, no one cares.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our first nonfiction book next week. The Future Was Now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to close out a hot sci-fi summer with...
Yep. One last crossover, and I came up with this one on the fly, but I thought it would be appropriate. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Okay. Dan is springing...
It's a crossover.
Dan is springing
It's
this
a crossover.
On me. I think people have suggested it. It's been a long time since I saw it. I wasn't a huge fan at the time, which I know is weird. Makes me a strange person. But it's a very important part of our popular culture. So if you want to do it, Dan, you want to do it?
I do want to do it, actually.
All right. Well,
yes,
then
I do.
you...
Yeah.
All right. We're going to...
I've been in charge this summer, and you haven't always liked everything.
But
this will be the last time, and then we will move, and then we'll schedule the fall. And then never again will Dan be driving the car. Anna will turn this podcast right around.
That's right.
If I choose something else.
And we have not planned out our fall yet.
No.
If you've been listening regularly, you might know that I have suggested we do political horror, but that might be close to home.
Mm-hmm.
And also one of the themes of this podcast is that everything is political, but I meant more overtly, political thrillers. You know what? Actually, we're still supposed to do Hunt for Red October. We could do 3 Days the Condor and Hunt for Red October.
Is that
Parallax View?
I mean...
No, I'm saying thriller, political thrillers.
Oh.
What about Parallax
the Conversation,
View?
Actually. Conversation would be the one.
Conversation. This is... I like this idea. Okay,
we'll discuss this in executive session.
We'll workshop
patrons don't need to hear this conversation.
All right. And it will be... I will do it October, because we're going to do Hunt for Red October in October.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we'd actually nailed that down before, but we will be doing that.
Actually, I think one of the patrons suggested it, to be fair. So yeah, but it was a good idea.
Oh, speaking of patrons, Dan,
you know what?
What is this thing you refer to as a patron?
So if you are enjoying this podcast and had to listen to ads at the beginning, that means you are not a patron. A way to avoid listening to the ads is to become a patron. If you go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/spacethenation, join for as little as $3 a month. Lots of good reasons to do so. Among others, there are special episodes accessible only to patrons. You get early access to episodes. You get early access to videos.
Which I post semi-regularly.
On a periodic basis.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of semi-regularly, we have AUAs every once in a while, once every other month or something. You like how I did that?
Yes.
But we should have one the next weekend or something.
We did quarterly AUAs, basically.
Yeah. The point is, we love our patrons, but the biggest reason to become a patron is access to our Discord channel. Yeah. And again, really, it's a high-quality Discord, and that has something to do with Anna, very little to do with me, and an awful lot to do with the patrons, who are all really stellar and have interesting things to say. And of course, we get to answer their questions sometimes on the podcast.
And they get to suggest things, and it's the best way to make suggestions. It's the best way to contact us about almost anything, including corrections and omissions and suggestions. And it's very lively on the political front right now. We have lots of people watching politics. And actually, that reminds me, Dan, I have a new podcast. It's called 90 Days with Anna Marie Cox. You might be familiar with it from having been a guest.
From having been on it, yes, I'm somewhat familiar. I still haven't got my swag from that, Anna. I'm just noting that,
Since
I want my
our
90
logo
days with Anna
is
Marie
my
Cox.
handwritten note saying 90 days with Anna Marie Cox. I can give you a piece of original swag. That would be my handwritten
Oh, yeah!
note.
That would be awesome.
It's been really, it was only the second week, but it's been really, really good. Obviously had you on. You're amazing. Also had Beto O'Rourke on, and he was fantastic.
He's almost as good. No, sorry.
Almost as good. Why he's not a senator right now, I don't know. Just small Easter egg to Beto's appearance. He has a framed photo of Joe Strummer in his library, like behind him. I've got the,
That's pretty good.
redone Alien poster, but he has Joe Strummer. That's pretty cool. Also had Anna Sale from Death, Sex, and Money. My friend Betsy Hodges, former mayor of Minneapolis, who is now like a educator and consultant around racial equity. It's been great. It's been really good. It's basically, oh my God, this election is happening. I think that's a good tagline. 90 Days with Anna Marie Cox. Oh my God, this election. There.
It's happening.
It's happening. All right.
Yep.
Speaking of it's happening, Dan, do we want to continue with the show?
Yeah, we should. We should
talk about the movie that we're going to talk about.
We should talk about the movie, which we should first explain why are we doing Alien Romulus? And the answer is that, our company contract stipulates that we need to record an episode whenever there's a new addition to the Alien franchise, otherwise on complete forfeiture of shares.
They have changed the quota, Dan. So
those motherfuckers. God damn it. That's it.
Before we can be free, we still have more Alien episodes to record.
They'll never stop adding content, will they? Actually, that was one of my takeaways after watching this film.
But this was good content. They mined that hell-forsaken planet, and they got some gold. I think. I
will say, Fede Alvarez mined us in ways I was not expecting. I have not seen any of his previous films, but I know that he's like a real horror master, and there is obviously some horror in this film, but there's also other stuff, and I was kind of legitimately surprised by that. Which does lead to the obvious question, will this podcast ruin it for you? In other words, should you go see this film before listening to this podcast? And I'm going to say yes, just in the sense that some of the biggest shocks in this film deserve some virgin eyes. I mean, we're gonna be
virgin in there for a reason, Dan. Is that do you mean?
I don't know why
you say virgin eyes. Could you just mean eyes that haven't seen things before? Don't mean the eyes of yes.
I really don't. No. But let's just put it this way: there's going to be spoilers from here on in. Just be forewarned. Also, I agree with Anna. This was good. This was pretty good. I would say we'll talk about where this ranks in the Alien franchise, but it ranks up there and definitely better than Prometheus, in my opinion. So, yes, you should go see it.
I'm sorry, my heart. There is a very fun cameo that I had not heard about anywhere. I was surprised. It's like the end of Infinity War. The nation's critics have agreed we should talk about this cameo. And congratulations to them. Although maybe by the time this is out, people have heard about it. But
yes, probably.
Once the film started to unfold, I could see it coming, but was still kind of shocked. Oh, they went there. They didn't go there. It
took me a second. It took me a beat to realize what was going on, actually, because we'll get to this, but when you see that character, you're like, oh, okay, and you don't think it's going to play a role, and then of course it winds up playing a relatively important one. All right, let's get to the story behind the story. Anna,
I forgot to give you a line, Dan.
You forgot to give me a line.
Dan, your programming is glitching.
Anna, why can't you write it? Have you heard about the novel in Zero G? You can't put it down, can you?
There you go. I'm just going to rely on your original dad joke programming.
Yeah. That was not original. That was actually the film.
No, I know. That's your original dad.
Yeah.
The fact that you're a dad. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yes.
Hopefully you've already seen the movie by now and you understand all of that. First thing I have to really urge people to watch the interview between Alvarez and Ridley Scott that was part of the Alien re-release that I saw when I went to go see Alien in the theaters. 100% life goal is to care as little about anything as Ridley Scott does about that interview. That is... You've seen parts of it, right, Dan?
Well, no, I saw parts of it because I was on YouTube. And I remember when we re-released our Alien episode, we had a little opening at the beginning where you talked about how, honestly, Ridley Scott said something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, it's a great film, Alien Romulus," and it's clear he had zero opinion on it.
And probably hadn't seen it. It's just he is what's kind of sad and at this point I think endearing is Alvarez is fanboying out, right? Talking to Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott's like, yeah,
sure, kid. Yeah. Although I will say this,
and there is something where he's like, I really appreciate all the support you've given, and Ridley Scott's like, yep. Residuals coming in 10, 9.
The funny thing about this, and we'll talk about this later, is that you're right. Obviously, Fede Alvarez worships Ridley Scott, but what's funny about this film is it owes more to Cameron, I would argue, than it does to Ridley Scott.
The movie itself owes more, but I think Alvarez is trying to reference and pay homage to the first one.
Oh, I agree he's doing both, but I mean, and we'll talk about this.
Right. So I also, but before there's not very much out there about this that I've seen actually. So originally supposed to be a Hulu movie. Glad it wasn't. I think it really benefits from being on the big screen.
Oh yeah. And again, to those of you who are wondering, on the fence, should I go see this or not? This is a movie that benefits from being on the big screen. The effects in particular are quite something to see on the big screen.
And also, we will talk about this. Maybe not a lot more, but I know we'll talk about this more. But a lot of the buzz before it came out was about how gross it was, the body horror. And there's apparently just this one scene that Alvarez is really proud of, is breaking new ground in body horror. And I think I know the scene he was referring to, and I have to tell you, I did not think it was that bad.
On it, I think you and I actually had a more original thought about what was going to happen than what actually happened. So, yeah.
I just did not think it was... We'll talk about it again. You've hopefully already seen it, but we'll wait to the place that it happens, or maybe in a different section. But I actually also laughed out loud when I realized, this is the scene he's talking about?
It's funny. I laughed out loud because of what I thought was about to happen that didn't happen.
Shocked by? But go ahead.
Yeah. I laughed out loud at what I thought was about to happen that wound up not happening. So I was actually surprised, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But for now, let's stick with Chekhov's What's It? This is the thing that often appears in the first act of the film that winds up being somewhat salient come the third act. Anna, do you have one?
I forgot to put one in, Dan.
Okay. I'll do it for both of us then.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. It's just Chekhov's Gravity Purge.
Yes, that's a good one.
Which I'm just going to add, for the record, makes zero sense. But as a plot device, perfectly fine. But the idea that you need to somehow purge gravity, that's not how gravity works. I just want that very clear. It's not normally something I would care about, but I don't know why that just bothered me.
I was going to put this in the debris field appropriately enough, but the science in this movie is suspect.
It's poor.
Sus.
Let's just say poor. Yes, sus. That's good. Some sus science.
If you're a sciencey type and you go see this movie, just put your science brain on hold. Just take that little chip out of your neck, the science chip, and put it somewhere else. Because you don't need that upgrade during this movie. It will bother you. All right. I think we've covered what we need to cover before we talk about the plot, Dan. Let's talk about the plot.
All right. Let's start with Act 1. It's a space heist. As Weyland-Yutani is busy reclaiming bits of the Nostromo, our plot starts with one Rain Carradine, an orphaned contract worker on the mining colony Jackson Star. Her only real companion is Andy, a discarded synthetic, basically reclamated by her father, whose entire personality seems to consist of dad jokes and protecting his sister. Rain's contract is involuntarily extended, so she agrees to join her ex-boyfriend Tyler in attempting to escape. The plan is for Rain, Andy, Tyler, Tyler's pregnant sister Kay, Tyler's cousin Bjorn, and Bjorn's girlfriend Navarro to launch in the mining hauler Corbalon and scavenge a derelict Weyland-Yutani spacecraft for cryopods and then set course for Ivaga, a non-corporate colony. The key to this entire plan is Andy's ability, as a synthetic, to interface with spacecraft systems. But Rain is still reluctant since Ivaga doesn't allow synths to live on that world. The Corbalon docks with the derelict space station, which is drifting towards Jackson's planetary rings and will be destroyed in 36 hours. The first indication that, guess what, not everything is going to go according to plan.
A heist where something goes wrong?
I know, Anna. Who would have thunk it?
I just want to see for once a heist movie where just everything just like clicks, like just nothing bad ever happens. There's nothing to deal with. There's no cause for alarm.
I would actually argue that is Soderbergh's Ocean 11.
You're right.
Nothing actually goes wrong in that.
You're right. That is actually the tension of the movie is all you think things are going wrong.
Right, exactly. Yes.
I love that.
That's why it's the perfect rewatch. Yes. It's a great movie. All right. Anyway, Tyler, Bjorn, and Andy enter the research station, which is cleverly divided into two halves, Romulus and Remus. They find the cryopods, but the pods don't have enough fuel. They find another chamber with extra amounts of fuel, but that compartment locks down and Andy can't open it. Rain and Navarro cross over, and Rain gets a chip from a damaged synth to implant into Andy in order to grant him wider access to the station.
I feel like I want to jump in as omniscient narrator and be like,
yes,
we, the audience, see dozens of face huggers hatch.
Right. By the way, I stopped here because I wanted to just talk about this before the aliens enter the plot.
Okay.
So, before we get to that plot, any thought about our cast of characters? Because my basic takeaway is that Kaylee Spaney is a fantastic final girl, and Fede Alvarez's camera loves her. I mean, I don't know about you. Maybe this is because I was watching in the theater. I was just struck by the number of close-ups in her. There's a lot, her camera, or her face occupies an awful lot of the screen an awful lot of the time. David Johnson as Andy is great, which we will get to in a bit. Everyone else is entirely forgettable. And, I mean, it doesn't help that Tyler and Kay are supposed to be brother and sister and have wildly different accents.
I'm somewhat accent blind, so that is not what jumped out at me.
Okay.
I do hope Rain gets to follow her dream of becoming a combat photojournalist on Yaga.
For those of you who do not listen to this podcast on a regular basis, Kaylee Spaney is also in the film Civil War, which Anna is a little bit into, by the way. So, it's another reason to watch this film.
I'm somewhat only mildly obsessed with it.
Yeah.
But I do agree that everyone else is basically a glorified red shirt. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that after you sent me the script. This could have been a two-hander with just Rain and Andy. I think you could rewrite the plot so that it's just them that goes to the derelict spaceship. Almost. I mean, maybe not literally just them.
I can't quite go there because, among other things, you need some of the red shirts to die for a variety of reasons. And also, as we'll get to, Andy makes some choices that are important.
Okay, all right. I'm just saying they're the two, but the rest of them are red. But I guess maybe you made a point. They're red shirts. I mean, there's no other function for them in this plot besides as humans that are in theory valuable and shouldn't die. But yes, they're going to die.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I will say this: the actor who plays Bjorn does a good job of playing an asshole. That's I do remember him thinking he's an asshole, and that was and the actress who plays Kay, I believe, is Isabella Merced, who's very attractive, but yeah.
And I thought that not on screen a lot, but Navarro in that limited role is very dynamic. I mean, it's a weird thing that she's our first kill and everything, but she has a personality. Now I want to find that actress's name, but so I'm changing my mind a little bit. They're not red shirts. They're glorified red shirts. That's exactly what I mean. They're
fancy red shirts.
They're given some stuff to do. It would be nice if you didn't want them to be red shirts to be given a little more.
I guess, let me put it this way. We are praising this film, and I think it's a good film, but I think the contrast, let's say, is between this and Aliens. Not Alien, Aliens. Because in Aliens, we meet all of those Marines. We actually don't spend a lot of time with any of them. I mean, most of them are dead, with less than half of the film done. But they were all character. Like, you got a sense of almost all of them. And that's the difference, I think, between a great film and what we're dealing with here, is the way I would put it.
I agree.
Aliens is a great film, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not trying to diminish this one, but like a great film makes you feel like all of the characters, and this one doesn't quite rise to that level, is what I'm saying.
I agree. This is almost, see, it's not a good, bad movie, but it is a little movie that could, and it's not even a little movie, but it feels like we will talk more about this. I think let's save some of these larger thoughts for
okay, I will say this. I think the reason I like this film too. I think it exceeded our expectations. That would be the way I would put it. And maybe that's it. There were lots of reasons to think this was not necessarily going to be a great film. I agree with you. It exceeded my expectations, and I think that's one of the reasons I do like it. But again, it's not Aliens or Alien. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think that interview between Ridley Scott and Fede Alvarez is the main reason I thought this was going to be a bad movie. Sometimes Ridley Scott not giving a shit is not an indication of the quality of the film. That's the takeaway. He gave a shit about Prometheus, and look what happened. Yes. Okay. Good point. All right, here we go. And let's not even start about Alien Covenant. All right, let's continue with Act 2, Andy 2.0. As the locked chamber heats up, the alien facehuggers stored there start to wake up and break free of their constraints. A rebooted Andy unlocks the chamber, but a facehugger latches onto Navarro. Rain reactivates the station's half-eaten science officer / synth, Rook, to save her. And, gosh, you'll never believe who plays Rook, sort of. Rook clearly is the same category of synth as Ash, played by Ian Holm in the original Alien on the Nostromo. Rook exposits that the science station's crew was killed by the xenomorph and warns that Navarro might be beyond saving. They do manage to remove the facehugger from her, but Bjorn flees with Navarro onto the Corbalon when Andy and Rook start warning that she might still be impregnated. Bjorn launches the Corbalon, stranding Andy, Rain, and Tyler on the station. An alien, sure enough, bursts through Navarro's chest, causing Kay to damage the ship's controls. The Corbalon crashes into the Romulus hangar, altering the station's orbit and leaving less than an hour before it collides with Jackson's planetary rings. Kay is knocked out from the impact, and the xenomorph escapes into the ship. When Kay regains consciousness, she runs into Bjorn, who has located the xenomorph gestating into its adult form. Attempting and failing to kill the alien using an overcharged stun stick, Bjorn dies from its acidic blood. Okay, Anna, let's talk about Rook, who is obviously an AI creation that looks and sounds like Ian Holm's Ash from the original film. And also, we should add, Ian Holm is dead. I am not normally a huge fan of using AI to play a character. Like, I find those Michael Jordan AI ads really creepy. And I've generally found that, most of the time they're used in a film that doesn't necessarily work terribly well. Weirdly, I have less of a problem in this case. And I think that might be because the character itself is supposed to be an artificial person. The most important thing here is that Ian Holm's family and estate approved of this. Mm-hmm. That Alvarez contacted them before they went even to filming to make sure that this was something they were okay with. And in fact, Holmes's widow said that she thought that Ian Holmes always wanted to do more acting than he got to do. Like, he passed away, but he still had more in him, and felt like this actually would have been a project that he would have been excited to be a part of. So I think that's really cool. Also, they screened those parts for the family before putting them in the film. And I think that level of risk, and it was apparently very emotional for everyone, I'm sure, not surprisingly. And I think that level of respect and honoring the craft that went into the character that is being drawn upon here, I think is pretty important and interesting. I would like to know, and I guess it's not really the point, if the Holmes estate got anything, if his, in terms of the labor in the back end, probably not. Yeah. And in this particular case, maybe that's not the kind of labor issue that it was during the strike, last year.
Yeah.
But that is a concern.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the issues of the strike was not using AI characters to replace actual actors. I mean, in this case, as I said, I think it's appropriate, but it does raise some interesting questions.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is like what would make I think it's really cool that they okayed everything with the estate and with the actor's family. I think that's kind of the least you can do. The thing that's totally would be great is if actors had rights to themselves beyond their appearance in the particular film. Like, that's what we're talking about,
Let me add, like, the one thing that, how do I put this? I think you're right, but here's what I'm actually worried about, and I'm going to ask Sigourney Weaver now not to do this. If Sigourney Weaver said, sure, you can just use my likeness and voice, make as many alien films as you want, I would feel bad about that. I don't want to see Ripley appear in any more of these films. It's just, you know what I mean?
I would say that if Sigourney Weaver were compensated for that in some way, I would, as a person for labor rights, that would make it better. As a person who consumes movies, no.
That's okay. So we're just making sure we were on the same page there. Yeah. Okay.
Like, for me, it's like, what can you control and what can't you? I can't wave a magic wand and tell studios, don't ever do this with this technology, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess if I had a magic wand, I could do that. Yeah, if I had a magic wand, I would do that.
I'm a little worried about you with a magic wand now that I think about this, but yes, that would probably be one of the good things you would do.
Wouldn't be the highest thing on my list. A higher thing would be the compensation of people's labor for this.
It would be a long list.
So that. It's a long list. Okay. Ask me again in December or late November what my magic wand list looks like.
That sounds good. All right, for those of you who are not patrons, now is the time for our ad break. We'll be right back after these messages for Weyland-Yutani Instant Cornbread.
Welcome back, and I have to do a public service announcement, which is don't play with the alien goo. Don't touch it. Don't put it in someone's drink. And do not inject it into yourself, especially pregnant mothers. Do not inject yourself with the goo. Just, how many times do we need to warn people, Dan? At what point?
Apparently a fair amount, Anna. They keep doing it. Like, it's
this movie franchise wouldn't survive if people were more concerned about alien goo. So I guess we have to just allow it.
I'm going to point this out. We said this in the original Alien podcast. This franchise would not exist if everyone had listened to Ripley in the first episode, in the first movie, and followed quarantine protocol. I'm just going to leave that there. Yeah.
The best Tim Walz, there's a lot of good Tim Walz memes out there, but one of the best ones was Tim Walz would have listened to Ripley.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, that was very good. All right.
As a teacher, even he's a social sciences instructor and not a sciences, but I feel like he would have really understood lab protocol.
So. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. All right, let's move on to Act 3. We need to talk about Andy. Rain, Andy, and Tyler make their way to the hangar bay while avoiding the escaped facehuggers, while Andy's entire personality begins to resemble Rook. Kay escapes the Corbalon, but is stalked by a xenomorph trying to lure the others into a trap. Andy, recognizing the trap, refuses to unlock the hangar door despite Tyler's protests so as not to put everyone at risk. The three of them watch helplessly as Kay is attacked and dragged away. Following his new reprogrammed loyalty to the corporation, Andy retrieves samples of a fluid compound scientists had extracted from the xenomorphs. Rook explains that this Prometheus strain will make off-world workers less prone to sickness and early death. Rook insists that the samples be brought to the colony and disables the Corbalon from leaving without them. Rain and Tyler arm themselves and rescue Kay from a xenomorph cocoon, but Tyler is killed and Andy is incapacitated. Rain tells a badly injured Kay to make her way to the Corbalon while giving her the goo. Anna questions why this was necessary. I think it was because Rook would not have let them leave. Yeah, it was for the plot. But, in other words, Rook would have not enabled them. Yeah.
But Andy's injured. Oh, Rook is still alive.
Rook is still alive.
Controlling stuff. Okay. Because even in the movie, I was like, why? She knows it's because Rain seems to have a good head on her shoulders.
Yes.
One that's not Rook. and seems to understand, like, alien goo, even if it has in fancy injector things, probably not good. But anyway, okay. Yes. Goo.
Yeah.
Goo necessary to escape.
Right. Once on the Corbalon, Kay, who is bleeding pretty badly, to be fair, injects herself with the Prometheus strain. Anna, I do want to say props to Alvarez and everyone who was involved in the making of the film. One of the things I did love about it, it's a beautiful film to watch, and I mean that in the sense of it is a seamless mix of practical effects and visual effects. And also, unlike Prometheus and Covenant, it looks as dingy as the original Alien, but it doesn't look cheap. It is the best kind of fan servicing. In other words, this is supposed to take place between the original Alien and Aliens, and it does that incredibly well. And I was just impressed by it.
Hey, we were talking about this a little bit. It's just so clear that Alvarez loves the franchise. Just and that affection
I don't think I would have
expected,
but yeah,
is contagious.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like a money grab, basically. It doesn't feel like IP for IP's sake, which is something that I actually feel like with, maybe that's one reason I like Prometheus a little bit, is that Prometheus does not feel like IP for IP's sake, right? Like, Prometheus is coming from someplace.
Yeah.
It's coming from a director who wanted to make this movie for reasons that, we do not understand, but really wanted to make this movie. And this director had a vision and cared a lot about it. And that comes through in a big way. And I have at the end for Debris Field, I have a bunch of the different sort of references and Easter eggs. But I think he correctly has the right vibe. And it's interesting that a movie made, 50 years later can replicate that feel so well. Like I actually was thinking about rewatching Alien tonight because he somehow does it. It's that futurist and grungy at the same time. Like, it doesn't just seem like, oh, they didn't really do a good job of, it doesn't seem cheap. Yeah. It's grungy, but not cheap, as you say.
In other words, it seemed like, oh yeah, of course, this is made around the same time as Alien, but like, it looks fantastic. And again, just props. And as you say, he loves the franchise, and we'll talk about the Easter eggs and so forth. The one thing I would say is that with one exception, the thing about all of that is that it doesn't take you out of the film. There was one exception, I thought, and we'll get to that. But, let's get to Act 4. This crew could have used a childless cat lady. Rain returns to the Romulus and saves Andy by replacing his control chip with, I think, the older chip. So, in other words, Andy's personality returns to what we saw at the beginning of the film, thus returning his primary loyalty to Rain. Cornered by the xenomorphs, Rain briefly disables the ship's gravity to fight them off. They shoot a lot of them and are then able to take the elevator shaft back to the Corbalon just before the station crashes into the rings, destroying Rook and the xenomorphs along with it. Rain and Andy prepare for their trip to Ivaga. Just as Rain is about to go to sleep, though, she sees that Kay's pod has a bit of a problem, and boy does it! Kay, affected by the fluid injection, gives birth to a human xenomorph offspring. The rapidly growing offspring kills Kay and injures Andy, but Rain manages to lure the creature into a cargo pod and then eject that into Jackson's rings, destroying the offspring and regaining control of the ship. She places Andy in a stasis chamber and records a final log about their uncertain arrival at Ivaga before entering stasis herself. And nothing bad will happen to them ever again. I always like saying that at the end of a horror film. All right, Anna, I was not expecting a nod to Alien Resurrection in this film, but that's kind of what we got. And I'm going to be honest, as much as everyone said they were going to be shocked by that scene, I thought it was going to go in an even more perverse direction, because there's a brief moment where you see the, like, xenomorph offspring, like the mouth come out of the outer mouth, and I thought it was going to breastfeed from Kay. That's where I thought it was going, and that was when I laughed out loud. And it didn't do that. I was a little disappointed, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that would have been... I don't know how I would have felt about that. Just the mouth coming out of the mouth was really icky.
Yeah.
That was ickier than the actual birth scene, which is what I assume Alvarez was talking about when he was like, we're going to go somewhere no one ever goes, right? Like, do you think... Yeah. I think that's what he was referring to. And maybe this is more about me than anything else.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was that shocking.
I agree. I mean, like, the only other thing that I thought was unusual was when they had, like, that little X-ray, and so Navarro could see the thing about the chest burster just before it happened. But that wasn't gross. I think this was supposed to be gross, and The Offspring is gross as hell. I mean, I actually kept looking away whenever that thing wound up being on the screen. That was gross. But what was interesting, again,
I've only seen Alien Resurrection Valley. That is a...
Yeah. But we saw things like that actually in Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection had all of these sort of like Ripley alien hybrid clone things that were gross. This was grosser, but like I wasn't expecting a callback to that movie. It was a funny thing.
Yeah, I thought The Offspring. You keep on saying I keep thinking of the band. Yeah, whenever you say The Offspring, it's capitalized in our script.
Oh, okay. The hybrid. I don't know how else to call it. The child. Yeah.
Oh, no. I think maybe the band would be honored that you were thinking that you would put it that way. I do think that The Offspring was really the freakier than The Birth. I also did really like Rain's reaction to seeing a human face in the egg. And that's the moment that the culture warriors probably, want us to have there. It's like, oh no, it's human. What is she going to do? And it does give her enough pause that she, drops it. And then do you want to talk here about sort of generally where we feel this belongs in the Alien canon?
Sure. Why don't you go first?
I think it's solid number 3. I mean, I really think it is a solid number 3.
Yeah.
Now, part of me wonders if I'll still feel that way in a year, but it's... I think I probably will, because the other movies are really bad, Dan. That's the thing, is the other movies are bad.
So, yeah, that's my takeaway. Like, live with this way. Here's what I would say. This is the 3rd best Alien film. That's absolutely clear. Yeah. I agree with you. That's not quite the compliment that perhaps, like, many will think, because as you say, the other ones are all really bad. And I suppose the one thing I would say, and this is the one area where I will agree with you about Prometheus, is that Ridley Scott's ambition in that film was greater than Fede Alvarez's ambition in this film. That's not a knock on Fede Alvarez. Like, he's coming in a slightly different way. And this is a much better crafted film than Prometheus was. But, like, I kind of wish he was somewhat asking bigger questions in this film. Like, there was an interesting theme, this question about brotherhood, like, family and so on and so forth. And that's not something that, like, Alien and Aliens sort of tackled that, but, like, the character of Andy in particular was an interesting one, and the idea of brothers and sisters could have been, like you're playing with that. I mean, obviously you're naming the ship Romulus and Remus, for fuck's sake, so clearly that's... But I think in the end it's not all that deep, unfortunately, and that was the thing that was frustrating.
I think that this is a movie that is sort of bigger than the sum of its parts, and Prometheus is smaller than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the thing about this movie is that even though it succeeds on that level, the parts are really small.
Yeah. Whereas the parts in Prometheus really, are pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree that when the plot is being set up, also, we didn't say this, but the plot is pretty elegant. I mean, there's a lot of science that's bad, but the space heist and also like how they get everyone on board and how they separate people, like that's a horror movie planner doing that. That's a director that's directed horror movies who's got kind of like the geography of how do we get people set up in these different areas. They can't get at each other or they can get at each other. I thought that was really well done. And
by the way, I want to stress here, like this again, it makes it the anti-Prometheus, because while characters do somewhat dumb things in this film, there is a good reason why they're doing them at the time. And like that was very different from Prometheus.
Yes, I'm thinking of the. I guess there's no reason to keep it here, but like the room temperature scene was science-y, problematic, and so bad, such bad science that part of me was like, "Come on."
Yeah. You mean where like if they make the room temperature like 98.6 and the aliens can't see them?
That's not how temperature works.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
I rewatched the Endgame and Infinity War recently. It reminded me of there's a scene where Drax says, "But I'm standing so still, you can't see me."
Yes. That it's Drax science. We can call it.
I was reminded of that.
Yeah.
It's Drax science.
It's Drax science. Yeah. Just quickly, I did go to see this film with my daughter Lauren, who is a big fan of Alien, and I always like to provide her one-sentence reviews when we go see these films. Her one-sentence review of this one: don't ever splice alien and human DNA, please. And you know what? Lauren's talking some sense there. That's all. I'm just going to leave it with that.
That could be her campaign slogan, I think. A good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have a question for you? And it's not about Lauren's opinion, Dan. It's a question for you.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Please.
Is there IR in this little movie?
Here comes the crush, Anna. But there's not much of a crush because there's some IR in this film, but it's very, very, very wee. Mostly what this film suggests is that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is basically the British East India Company of outer space, with a minimal to no role for the state as we understand it. And unsurprisingly, and the film makes this very clear, the company's core interests might not be entirely congruent with that of society writ large, or even, God forbid, its own workers. Hence, the attempt to develop the Prometheus strain makes some sense. Although, this was one plot element that made no sense to me because Rook claims that they've done it and that it's perfect. And we see Rook like show a video of like the rat like reconstituting itself once it's injected. But then it goes back to the video and we then see it doesn't work for the rat because the rat then basically explodes, or the alien like explodes from within the rat. So I'm not entirely sure why Rook thinks this works, or what that part didn't make any sense to me. It leads me to think that the real problem the Weyland-Yutani Corporation has is the sunk cost fallacy, which is, there's no other way of putting this. This corporation gets fucked over by this alien so many goddamn times in this franchise. I mean, every single time. You know, every time they think, oh, surely we can commercialize this. Surely we can somehow make a profit off it. You know what? If you failed 4 or 5 times, maybe that's the moment when you think, nope, it might be time to give up. Maybe we should pursue a more risk-averse position. But it's like the CEO keeps thinking, nope, we're in this far. Let's try again. You know, that part was very funny to me, actually.
Like, even we're going to weaponize this. Yeah. I think this is kind of brilliant, Dan. I don't know if I've ever heard this point made before, because even in they're just trying to weaponize it, because that was my first thought when you're like, why do they want to carry the goo out, even if Rook surely knows.
Right.
He knows, only shows them the good part of the video, right?
Right.
And so Rook
knows. Which means he has to know there's a bad part, right.
So my first thought was, oh, well, they really are just trying to use it as a weapon now. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just telling them that for some reason.
Yeah.
So they'll leave with it. He's telling them that, so they'll take it off the station. Mm-hmm. But he knows it's really just a weapon. But even if it's really just a weapon, they do still keep getting fucked over. And in the Prometheus, we now know that they know about Prometheus because he says something about receiving the Prometheus files. So they know what happened on the Prometheus. Surely. They're like, this is bad and we shouldn't.
They lost $1 trillion ship. Yeah, probably not a good thing to just.
And that it was like a weapon staging thing. Yeah. That's the reason the goo to begin with is a weapon that backfired on its creators. But
there's no need to weaponize this thing. This thing is already weaponized.
Yeah, that wound up killing everyone. But oh no, we can control it. So yeah, you raise that. I mean, all I can say, Dan, is that they thought they could make money off it, and capitalism surely blinds people to dangers.
You know what, Anna? That's a good point, and that does raise a question I guess I should ask you.
Okay.
Is there a critique of capitalism in this film?
Dan, the fucking thing is hunting us. Capitalism. I mean.
I can't believe you picked that up. Wow.
Yeah, yes. It's subtle. I do, the Anna's unified theory of the alien universe is that the more a movie critiques capitalism, the more an alien movie critiques capitalism, the better it is. And so far, I think I've got a lot of evidence.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yep. It's good data you got there.
Yeah. Workers don't matter. I mean, this is it is the same as, Weyland-Yutani is the British East India Company of the whole series, right? I mean, it's explicitly that, I believe. When the creators were talking about the alien movie, they were talking about Weyland-Yutani, or at that point, just Weyland being the British East India Company. Yeah, workers only matter to the extent that they can produce something. And then even in the logic of the film, if we believe Rook, again, if the Prometheus strain is intended to perfect workers, it's at the cost of the worker, right? Like, that's the only way that
I would say so.
We only care about workers in order to make them better workers. I think this movie is not very sophisticated in its critique of capitalism, and also not that interesting in its sexual politics either, as anyone who's listened to our episodes on the series knows. One of the things that I continue to find intriguing and love about the first Alien movie is its commentary on gender and sexual politics, and the way that it gets much of its horror from the idea of male rape and male pregnancy. I think Fede Alvarez missed that somehow. Like, because he's not doing anything interesting. I read an interview where he's like, we're taking Alien and like doing something a little different. I'm like, no, this is just pregnant people. Now it's just the people who we normally... It's not interesting. He thinks he's doing a real ooh.
We switched the gender. Whoa, that'll shake people up. No,
that was twist. The whole point. You know how Alien did this thing about male pregnancy? What if we did it about female pregnancy?
Yeah. No, I agree. Yep.
So that's not fascinating. Your idea that it should be or could have been about familial ties, and maybe less about pregnancy than maybe about surrogacy, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean when you are not born to the same person? Something about chosen families. And that is where I thought it was going. Like, the way that it gets set up, that she calls Andy her brother, but really he's not just not her brother. He's an artificial person. And then the fact that Kay is pregnant and she says the father is just some dick. Like, she didn't use the word dick. That would be funny.
Yeah.
Some asshole. Like, right. And that this little band is coming together as a family, a chosen family. Like, I kind of thought, that might be something we talk about, is we get to choose who the people we get to choose who we want to be surrounded by. But no, that's not what happened.
No, both one of the good things and one of the bad things you can say about Fede Alvarez is that he has an intriguing premise. Like, the first half of this film really is, there's a lot of possible ideas. It's just that in the end, most of them he doesn't bother with. And that's the one way in which this is a good film, but it's not quite what I guess I was hoping for.
I wanted to say one thing. I don't think I've played a social justice warrior card in this episode yet, so I'm just going to...
No, you've avoided it, so go ahead.
Pick one out of the deck.
Yep.
Just pick one out of the deck and present it to you. I found the character of Andy in the way his first iteration, I guess Andy versus Rook Andy, or Andy versus Andy 2.0, he seemed to be coded as neurodivergent or mentally disabled.
Yes, that was,
and that just made me made me a little, just pinged my radar, just pinged my SJW radar. But what do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think so. First of all, I really do want to give David Johnson, the actor, credit because he's basically got two different roles in this film, and he's good in both of them. I did not have a problem with that. I think it's further complicated by the fact that it is an artificial person. It is, to use his preferred term of art, and so it makes things even more difficult to sort of parse out. Like, one of the things we haven't even talked about is the fact that
Rain, black. The fact he's black too.
Yeah. I mean, well, the fact that the actor is black. Yeah, like that was definitely a choice. But like, one of the things we haven't even talked about is that Rain agreed to go to Ivaga with the understanding that they needed Andy because otherwise they weren't going to be able to do the salvage. But it was very clear that Andy was not going to be welcomed on that planet, and Rain knew that going in. And but nonetheless, in the movie, Rain could have escaped without Andy, but goes back for Andy, and so that's the sort of tell about the choice she makes. But it's not really terribly well developed. In terms of the SJW stuff, I was fine with it. I don't think you're supposed to feel empathy for Andy. The fact that like the kids are picking on him at the very beginning of the film, makes it very clear like you're supposed. And I don't know about you, actually, that was a great little scene because it wasn't until then that I realized, oh, he's actually a synth. I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize it either. I thought I was thinking he was adopted,
right?
Same. And neurodivergent in some way.
Yeah.
And I will be interested to read what I have no doubt there are takes, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are takes.
I guess, like, put it this way, of the many different ideas that Alvarez is trying to go for, that one, I think, that's one of the few where he's subtle about it, I guess, in some way, and that like it's there, but it's not talked about, and I don't have a problem with that necessarily.
Yeah, you're big there and not talk about person. I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's a choice. It has to be a choice to have a black actor portray Andy, or not. Maybe not. Like, I guess that's sort of a question that's just in my head. Is it supposed to be meaningful that Andy's black or not? Possibly it's not supposed to be meaningful, in which case, okay. All right, fine. But when you put a black actor in a role of a company-owned person, that is where you kind of have to, it has to mean something, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
And it feels like that's something that Alvarez doesn't fully play out. Maybe I would have fewer questions in a movie that had fewer sort of creative loose ends.
Okay, I think we should move on. We should get to The Least You Can Do. On occasion, Anna and I damn a movie with faint praise. Praise that would be very funny if it were on a movie poster as an endorsement. This is a good film, but it's far from a perfect film. Anna, do you have any such faint praise for Alien Romulus?
I mean, this is harder to do for a movie that I actually liked, but what I got is, for a movie without a cat, it's pretty good.
I have the feel-good movie of the year for J.D. Vance.
Loves forced birth for females. Loves him some women who are forced to give birth.
I loved all the females forcing to have birth, yes.
So this is the best Alien movie without a cat.
Yes, which actually brings us to our next segment. Hold on. That's disturbing. By the way, like, almost as disturbing as the human alien xenomorph would be if they merged it with a cat. Just going to point that out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. It's time for Discordant Notes. This is where we take a question from one of our patrons and answer it in the podcast. This one is from Jeff L., and it's about a cat. The movie lacked a cat. Would the presence of a cat has been enough to push Romulus into being a top-tier Alien movie? My answer to this very clearly is no. And I applaud Alvarez for not including a cat, because it is a rare example of restraint in this film. Like, we're going to get to this. There's a lot of fan servicing and like Easter eggs in this film. I was glad there was no cat. I didn't think there was no need. And also, like as Anna said, one of the things this movie does very well is, as a horror film, set people in various groupings and places where, you know, they're put in peril, and for some reason person A can't get to person B. The cat would have been on the ship the whole time. I'm not sure it would have added much.
I think you know me well enough, Dan. I'm never going to say don't include a cat. Like, I'm just... Like,
okay.
I am constitutionally incapable of saying a movie should not have a cat in it. Every movie.
I can hear your voice going, Space Kitty.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. The Godfather movies should have had cats. Star Wars movies kind of did have cats. And some of those aliens are kind of cat-like. Ocean's 11 could have used a cat. I mean, like, I guess, again, Showa, maybe not. Like, I know we... we often...
Oh my God, that was horrible!
Killed Dan.
That was so funny! Oh. Why? We saw a show, it was great, but it just didn't have any cats. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I made Dan cry with laughter. I feel so with a joke about it. For the Holocaust.
Oh, it's been that kind of year.
Dan has tears in his eyes, listeners. And it's not because he's sad.
No, it really isn't. Really isn't.
More seriously, to talk about this movie and cats.
Yes.
I think I was expecting a Jonesy reference. I think a Jonesy reference would have been fine. I think, you know, I had on in the background as I was looking at the script one of my nerdy YouTube channels, like deconstruction of Alien, and I think I forgot to point this out when we did our rewatch, even, but there is a kitten picture of Jonesy in the very first part of the movie where when the camera surveys the Nostromo in the captain's chair, like kind of as a little as you would put a picture of your kids as pilots do, like there's a little tiny picture of Jonesy as a kitten, and I think a little picture of Jonesy somewhere in that way would have been fine. But we already said this is the best Alien movie without a cat, so.
Yeah,
but having a cat wouldn't have put it up any higher.
You know where
I will say that.
Here's the way I would put it. If they had a cat, I would have been okay with a cat. If it had been on like Jackson's Star, like in the first opening sequence, that would have been a good place to put the cat. But like not on the ship.
Yeah. Just like or like having when they find the debris from the Nostromo, like having a cat carrier just kind of like float by.
that actually would have been funny. Okay, I like that. I would have struck with that. Okay. Oh, wait. What's that?
Oh, speaking of, it's the cat carrier.
Speaking of debris.
Cat carrier. All right.
It's the debris field. It's when we talk about things that, you know, we haven't gotten to earlier in the episode. I have some, but I suspect you have a fair amount. And I'm going to oh my God, you have a lot. Okay, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, some of it I've already gotten to. The science of the movie is bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's just get that out of the way. Good point.
There is the room temperature thing, and also where he says you make this. They hunt based on sound, and then they make a lot of sound. Like walking. There
was a moment where like Tyler is talking like. Did you not hear the instruction? Like, that's like, you know, but yes, I agree with you.
And the facehuggers also don't do anything. So there's that. And then there's this gravity purge, which I was fine to hand wave away. I know gravity doesn't need to be purged. That's not how gravity works. I was fine. Like, maybe I think even then, I think it might have been something like the gravity generator has to purge. Not the actual gravity needs to be purged, but like the gravity
and that would have been okay.
has to cycle.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever. Mm-hmm. But they still do the thing. And it's a cool shot when she kills all the aliens, and the way that they don't eat through the hull is because she turns off the gravity, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I still think that's not quite how it would. I mean, probably some other nerdier person than I will point out exactly how the physics of, I don't think of it would probably not work out just so there's like perfect circles of alien goo just free floating in space.
So she doesn't hit any of the acid. I would agree that was a fortuitous outcome. The one thing I liked about the one thing I will give them credit is when she uses the gun to change her position. That was actually, I liked that. That was good.
It was like, oh, we remembered real science for a second.
Yes, so exactly. But yes, other than that, you're right. The science is bad. I agree. I hadn't really realized that cornbread is a thing throughout all of these films. It's just funny to me that like in Alien and this one, and then in Aliens, there's constant reference, like there's cornbread being eaten. And apparently it's the one thing the Weyland-Yutani Corporation does well. I just love the idea that like, the corporation sucks at everything, but they make good cornbread.
It's like McDonald's fries.
There we go. Like, yeah.
Right. I have a list of the Easter eggs also.
Okay.
Do you want me to just go through the Easter eggs?
Yes. Go through them.
Okay. So drinking bird, right? The drinking bird.
No? Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in the very first scene, it's also in Aliens. Yes. The title sequence reminisces
where it starts with the straight lines. Yeah.
Starts straight. The score also kind of loosely pulls from the original Alien movie.
Oh yeah, the one, I don't know if you noticed, like the one I noticed in particular because we had just watched it, was like when he actually talks about the Prometheus strain and talks about the Prometheus file, the Prometheus like sound score starts coming on very briefly.
And in general, the score of this movie references the music of the first movie.
Yeah.
There's also that cattle prod, which is the prod used in the first movie, and also the heat sensor. And then, favorite, it's Rook versus Bishop, Dan.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. That's good. Yep. So, wait, if I can...
And then, go ahead.
Oh, well, I wanted to say the Aliens callback, as opposed to Alien. The obvious one was where Andy says, I prefer to be called artificial person, which is what Bishop says. When Tyler and Rain are learning how to use the gun, it evokes Hicks and Ripley. Okay, this was the callback I did not like. Maybe it was the one that you didn't like either. When Andy says, "Get away from her, you bitch." It was a jokey thing. I didn't have... It was okay.
I had a bigger problem with "It's the perfect organism." I had a bigger problem with "It's the perfect organism."
Really? That's odd, but like it would make sense that Rain would say that.
You mean Rook?
Rook, sorry, not Rain. Yes, Rook. I apologize. Yes.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's just such a perfect word for word thing. That's just fan service to a point that, like, come on. And then the other word for word one that took me out was, "I can't lie about your chances, but you have my sympathies." Which, I mean, if we're generous, we could say that that's just how Rook and Bishop have been programmed to talk.
Right.
So they both talk that way.
You mean Rook and Ash, by the way, not Bishop.
Yes. Yeah, right. Rook and Ash. But at the same time, I don't know. It's a little... I think the best fan service is like just under the layer of obvious, right? I mean, if it's...
But that was why "Get away from her, you bitch" was like so obvious. Like you were talking about other things like that.
I agree that it's obvious. It just didn't bother me as much as the other ones for some reason. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
The one I actually really liked, just one last one, which is there's a couple of shots where you see Rain at the very end where she's got the gun, and it's clearly designed to evoke Ripley when Ripley is carrying the gun in Aliens. Like, like the wind is blowing at her. And actually that's the best kind of fan service because nothing needed to be said, but anyone who's seen Aliens who sees that shot knows what they're evoking, and that worked very well, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's also just easy to forgive a lot of this stuff because it is done with such like
care, love,
sincerity. It doesn't feel like an IP grab.
No, it's not cynical in that sense. I agree with you on that. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for me. Do you have anything else?
A few small things. First, I don't know if you saw this. I did like the canary in the space mine. That was cute. I also, one last thing, which was, I was actually shocked. I very rarely gasp out loud, but there's a shot where Kay is fleeing the xenomorph, and then she falls like a couple of stories because like she goes off, and I just wasn't expecting that, and I was legitimately shocked by that. And in a film where like everyone is saying you're going to be really shocked by a lot of stuff, and I wasn't shocked by that much, I was actually shocked by that, and it was incredibly well shot. So again, props to Fede Alvarez.
Yeah, it's just a well-made movie.
Yeah.
It's a sincere and well-made movie, which, I mean, how often?
No, you know what it is? It's like Ridley Scott directed The Martian. And this is kind of like like Fede Alvarez's version of that. In the sense that it's incredibly well crafted and all that. I'm not sure it's got anything greater to say, but it's good. It's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that we have said everything that we can say about this movie. It's nice to just come down on you should go see it. That sort of feels like a nice thing to be able to say about a movie these days.
Yeah.
It's not going to depress you. It doesn't have anything larger to say about the universe. It is just you should go see that. It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's a good summer movie to go see. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you can reach us on social media. I am at Anna Marie Cox. He is at Dan Dresner on Blue Sky. I have visited that other site a little bit in the past few days, Dan, and it is ugly and not just in spirit. Have you been on Twitter at all? It's hideous. It's hard to navigate.
Oh, I thought
all the ads and.
I thought you were talking about Threads for a second because yeah, Twitter is.
Oh well,
I will say
is
this.
awful,
how do I put this? No, but there's one thing that makes me feel good about Twitter, which is I clearly followed the right people, because when I go to my own followed feed on Twitter, it's still okay. It's not great. There are a couple of trolls that I followed that are now populating the feed way too much because a lot of other good people have left, but it's still occasionally useful. But you're right. I mean, it's not all that much fun to go on.
So everyone should get on Blue Sky. That is where I post the most. And Dan is also on there.
Same thing.
I got to tell a story. I had something go viral on Blue Sky. Dan, you probably saw it, but I'm going to really retell the story, which is that when Beto was on my new show, 90 Days with Anna Marie Cox, there's a Tim Walz meme about how Walz has an extra Springsteen ticket for you. You may have seen when everyone was posting all the dear sweet things about Tim Walz, and it turns out Tim Walz gave Beto O'Rourke his extra Springsteen ticket. Literally did have an extra Springsteen ticket and gave it to Beto O'Rourke, and then as a thank you, Beto gave Tim Walz the Replacements Tim remastered box set, and. That is the most dad rock story you could possibly tell. It is just created in a lab to make dads who rock happy. And I am also on Instagram where I also put that story, but people on Blue Sky really liked it. It hit all the right Blue Sky buttons. Dan, you're on Threads and you do some other thing also.
I'm on Substack. It's called Dresner's World. I'm going to be talking about a lot about the election, but also foreign policy, other stuff, maybe some pop culture. You never know.
All right. Well, I think that is it for this episode. We were talking about a nonfiction book next called The Future Was Now. Future Was Now?
Future Was Now. By Chris Nashkawi.
Future Was Now. Until then.
Keep this channel open for